To this day, I'm constantly trying to figure out what's the best way for me to get the most leverage out of my time, because Bill Gates, Warren Buffett, like name some really wealthy person, we all have the same level playing field in terms of our hours of our day. Time management's not a real thing. People talk about this idea of being able to manage time, and the only thing you can manage is yourself. You can't actually manage time. Time's happening one way or another. So one of the things I'm a huge believer in is the idea that at the end of the day, what you actually want to manage is you want to manage what your priorities are in your day. And here's the reason this is important. You can't hit a target that, number one, doesn't exist. Number two, that target needs to be directionally accurate, because you're not just going to hit one target and retire. You want to hit targets that keep moving you in the direction of your ultimate goal. So you need to have targets that are also directionally accurate. They're pointing in the right direction. And then you need to have targets that are clearly defined and as specific as possible. Amazing. Okay. Let me give a little bit of context as we jump in on who I am, why I'm here. First off, super honored to be here with you guys today. The background for me is I'm only 2 years and a couple months into the business as a real estate agent. I got licensed at the very end of 2021. And when I got licensed, I had a background in business where I had done a couple different things related to largely marketing. And then in my first year, I sold 35 houses, which here in the greater Toronto area, the average price point is about $850,000. So keep that in mind, because I know you guys are probably all in different markets. And then the average commission is closer to 2% on either side, buying, selling. So my first year, I sold 35 houses. That turned out to be a gross commission of about $750,000. And then my second year in the business, I did, which is the year that just passed, which was 2023, I did 61 transactions and $42 million in sales volume. So I made closer to $850,000 in GCI. Now I share all that because I know there's a lot of people out there who will give you all these strategies, and maybe it's a lot of theory, or it's a lot of, here's the things that I'd recommend you do, but they don't have the sales record necessarily to back it up. There's also people that have sold way more real estate than me, even in their first and second years, which is awesome and amazing. And my goal is just to share what's worked for me. This isn't a, you guys should go do exactly what I've done. It's, here's what's worked for me. If you want the same results, just go do the same things, and I'll give you all the tools and resources. So because of that production, I'm with a brokerage called EXP. I was named the Rookie of the Year at EXP 2022. And then I was also one of the top 50 individual producers in the entire organization and throughout Canada. All right. So there's some context. Excited to dive in with you guys. Today, what I'm going to share about is spend some time talking about what my calendar has looked like. And it's evolved and progressed as I've gone. But I want to start talking about things like how to kind of set your day up for success, because I know for a lot of us, I don't know, maybe you relate to this. To this day, I'm constantly trying to figure out what's the best way for me to get the most leverage out of my time, because Bill Gates, Warren Buffett, like name some really wealthy person, we all have the same level playing field in terms of our hours of our day, and we need to try and make the most of those hours. So I'm going to talk through a couple different things. You guys all with me? Any other context that would be helpful from your perspective, Emmanuel or Karen, before I dive in?
Yeah, I've definitely shared a little bit of background having you now join us. So, but yeah, I think we're ready to dive in.
Awesome stuff. Okay, very cool. So first things first, time management's not a real thing. People talk about this idea of being able to manage time, and the only thing you can manage is yourself. You can't actually manage time. Time's happening one way or another. So one of the things I'm a huge believer in is the idea that at the end of the day, what you actually want to manage is you want to manage what your priorities are in your day. So I'm going to share my screen. We'll see if I'm allowed to do that. I might need some permissions. But here's the resource that I use in terms of how I lay out my day. And the cool thing is, Emmanuel, you've seen this before. This is something that I actively do with our team members, and that I actively do with everybody that's now an agent on my team, to help them understand how to first, before you're worried about like, what am I going to do first thing this morning? You want to be directionally accurate with where you're headed. And for all of you that have ever been a part of Keller Williams, you'd recognize this as a 411. And I'm sure this is not just a KW thing, but that's how I first learned about it. And here's the reason this is important. You can't hit a target that, number one, doesn't exist. Okay. Number two, that target needs to be directionally accurate, because you're not just going to hit one target and retire. You want to hit targets that keep moving you in the direction of your ultimate goal. So you need to have targets that are also directionally accurate. They're pointing in the right direction. And then you need to have targets that are clearly defined and as specific as possible. So what I like to do is at the beginning of the year, I lay out what are the big goals for the year? And I like to just try and keep it really simple and put them into 3 buckets, which is like, what are the personal goals that I have? What are the financial goals that I have? And then what are my business goals? And sometimes these categories overlap a little bit. But what I would encourage you to do is if you are trying to run your business right now and you're trying to do more sales, you're trying to grow your client base, you're trying to in some way, shape, or form grow and improve, and you don't have clearly defined yearly goals, you are 100% praying and spraying. And again, I said I was going to just share what's worked for me, but this is something that I think is universally true, is you have to decide, how am I going to measure this year based on success? And you want to define those things at the beginning of the year. So for me, I go pretty far with this. You can see, I'll share some of these resources as we go together, but you'll see here, I've got, okay, if I want to sell $62 million worth of real estate, that means that I would roughly make 1.2 million in GCI. It means that I need to do about 74 deals, but I put a question mark beside that because further down, you'll see that I have an aspiration to sell more expensive houses, which means that I probably don't need to do 74 deals. I need to do maybe 50 deals and then a set of more high dollar value deals. All right. So sell $2 million and up houses. That means breaking this math down. Well, I need to do 6 deals a month. And then I've used some other equations to add up, like how many leads do I need to be getting in a week? All right. So I need 44 leads in a week, which is 6 leads in a day. Now I've got the ability to look at this and go, today, if I want to hit this target and I have no other plans, my number one thing is to figure out how I'm going to get 6 leads today. And then we start to break that goal down into how we actually lay out the course of our day and our planning, which we'll get into in a second. I have some other plans regarding how many agents I want to be adding to my business, both either on my team locally or in my downline through EXP, that I can add value to, train and educate, whether they're in my local market or not. And I've got the number of YouTube subscribers that I want to go after. And all of these goals get broken down into, if I want this many subscribers, how many videos do I think that I need to be doing on a weekly basis? And what's the style of those videos? So again, when it comes to time is this thing where you can condense the results. Like I mentioned, my first year in the business, I had sold 35 houses. And then last year in 2023, I sold 61 houses. That is largely because I just condensed the amount of actions that I could fit into those years, while also, guys, selling a house for myself and buying a new house that I completely renovated. I just put $200,000 into a house and ripped the whole house apart. And we had a child. I have a son named Harvey, who I absolutely love. So it's not like I did all this stuff at the sacrifice of my marriage with my wife, who I refer to lovingly as Wonderful Helen. It's not like I sacrificed those things. I still have a really good balance. I attend my church, in the town that I live in, and I've still got a really good balance. But I've learned that you really do have to get really clear about where it is you're headed. And then what you do is you take these annual goals that you have and you break that down into, well, what is the one thing that I need to do this month to move the needle forward in these categories? And then you start to break those down into, like, this month, before the month's over, these are the things that I need to get done. And you write all that out. And then you look at your week and you're like, okay, if I've got one big thing that I need to get done this week, what's it going to look like? And you write down, get really clear on what your weekly things are. And the less you have to focus on, the better. All right. And I condense all the other weeks around this and I hide them so they don't get distracted by them. And then I've got a whole bunch of other stuff. Like I've got my vision here for my life, all the things that are my principles, how I have rules for my life. I don't read this every single day. I probably read this twice a week just to have a little refresher on what my priorities are, who I am, what I believe in matters. And then I've got this big vision board of all these goofy things that are actually really helpful for me. Things like where I'm going to have what I want my office to look like in the future, selling real estate in Florida, being the number one guy on YouTube for real estate, having these amazing seminars that I'm doing in the future. You can see I've I look hilarious. I've superimposed myself over Brendan Burchard in these, and it's ridiculous and awesome. Houses that I want to buy in the future. I've got, images that are aspirational, book sales that I want to do, how I want to dress and appear and carry myself. All right. The people that I want to be affiliated with, shots of me actually speaking on stage as reminders of I want to do more of that. Shots of big teams, just these visuals that help me. So the reason we're talking about all this is that before you just get busy, because we're all busy, before you get caught up in the busyness, your day-to-day life, which is a whirlwind. Like we all wake up, and depending on where you're at and what stage of life you have, I just have one kid, maybe some of you have 4 or 5 kids and you're totally overrun with the craziness of life. Or maybe you don't have any kids, just whatever stage you're at, we all wake up and every day is a hustle. We all hit the ground running. We're all trying to work toward this vision for the future. But if you don't start by getting clear about where it is that you're headed, then other people will come alongside you and lead you where they want you to go. So you've got to start by really deciding, what are my priorities? How do I lay out those annual goals, break those down? And then we get into your week. All right. So I break up my week a couple ways. Number one, what I do is I always have my one thing that I do first thing in the morning. I've oscillated between working out first thing in the morning, early in the morning. I've tried all these different things. The season of life that I'm in with a little boy where he wakes up and life's crazy. I wake up and I focus on my one thing first thing in the morning. And here's what a one thing is. If you guys haven't read the book, The One Thing by Gary Keller, it is an absolute must read. And this book is all about the idea that at the end of the day, you have priorities that you need to learn how to manage. And it asks this thing called the focusing question, which is what's the one thing that you can do today that such by doing it makes everything else easier or unnecessary. And what happens is when you learn to focus your attention and effort on the biggest things, that's how you get the highest level of results. So I start each day doing my one thing. So here's an example of what a one thing would be. Every single day I could go out and I could door knock. I could pick up the phone and call my sphere, my prospects. I could be asking for referrals. I could be creating content online. Name the activity. A lot of those activities aren't leveraged activities. They're unleveraged, meaning if I pick up the phone and make a phone call, it's 1-to-1 every time I do it. If I go knock on a door, I'm knocking on one door at one place at one time. A leveraged activity would be I'm going to put up a billboard that I have to design it one time. I'm going to leave it up there and pay for it ongoing. But once I've created the creative and I put it up there, it works for me. So I can be sleeping and there can be a billboard at night that's reminding people who I am, what it is that I do, and why they should hire me. And if you're not doing billboards, okay, I'm not doing them either. But it's an example of leverage that you all probably know. The biggest agents in your marketplace, they probably all have billboards. And the reason they do it is because it freaking works. All right. Another example that I actively do would be like YouTube advertising. So I run YouTube advertising in my market center where whether I'm sleeping, playing with my son Harvey, working on a deal, it doesn't matter. Someone somewhere in my city in the surrounding area is opening up their YouTube and seeing my face pop up on the screen talking about real estate. That's an example of how you want to have time in your day where you think about what the leveraged activities are that you can do. And if you say, Jake, I've got no money for YouTube advertising right now, an example would be, why don't you then sit down and write a newsletter? Because right now you're paying to get leads from Meskula. Those leads are sitting there. You've got a job to call them. And Meskula is a fantastic example of leverage. You have found a way to make sure that someone else is helping you generate leads so that whether or not you're doing anything, there's some advertising running out there for you. If you created a newsletter, that would be another way for you to monthly share content about you personally. Let me just cancel this call because rock and roll. It's a way for you to share content about you personally to your audience where you're gaining emails. And maybe those people aren't converting, but every time you send a newsletter, it's leveraged. You send it one time and it goes out to however many people you have in your database. Okay. So that's the difference between understanding leveraged and unleveraged time. And I always try to start my day with leverage time. Another example of leverage is hiring talented people to work for you, whether it's hiring a VA or an executive administrator or finding a buyer's agent you can work with. It gives you leverage because you make the decision, you do something one time, you maybe have a little bit of management time, but then you actually have hours in the day where you're focused on other things and people are pushing the needle forward for you in different areas. So I always start my each day with my one thing, and then I focus on sales. And sales time is not about getting back to existing clients or existing leads that have asked questions. Sales time for me is all about focusing on new people that have entered my database that I haven't contacted yet. And the reason I start there is because they're all kind of like mystery boxes. At any point in time, one of them could raise their hand and say, I am ready to go right now. I was just waiting for you to get back to me, and pick up the phone and give me a call, drop me an email or a text. And it's like, you've spent so much effort and energy getting leads that they better be the first people you call just to try and move the needle forward. All right. The second thing I do is then I would look at all the people that are super hot or other leads that I do owe something to, a response to. They're asking me questions. I can move them forward in the sales conversation and try to actually move that towards some type of appointment. All right. So the goal of sales time is to get appointments with people that you know are close to or thinking about transacting, or they're completely blank leads that come into your database and you got to convert them. And then I use the rest of my time about lunch onward to really focusing on following back with people, going on appointments, doing light administrative stuff that I need to do. That's the time for me to just get that done, because after, like, once it's the afternoon, I don't know about you guys, but I'm usually like, I'm done thinking super hard for the day. Maybe I need to work on a deal and I need to do some negotiation, and that's hard thinking. But it's like, I want those heaviest lifting things that I need to get done first thing in the morning, so that I can just fly through all that stuff and get it done. So I'm going to take a break here for a second to drink some water, because I'm talking like a maniac. I would love to hear some questions that you guys have, any initial thoughts you've got, and we'll keep chatting through this. But questions so far? What are you guys thinking about this?
I actually have a quick question. It may be a little side point, but I really like your setup that you have going over there for video conferencing, and how your laptop and the MacBook, I think it is, it's all set up. So any tips on that, maybe after the presentation, and what kind of equipment we could use? So, because it looks really polished, you see, like very like you're in a studio.
Awesome, man. Well, I'll tell you about it. It'll take 2 seconds. I've got 2 lights that I bought on Amazon that are like nice big lights. One over here that you see coming at me, the other one right over here. All right. 2 big lights with like the nice soft lighting on them. Then I've got a Canon EOS R. There's like an R on there. So I've got that camera. And then I've got an HDMI cable running to it with a little 4K HDMI cable that goes to some kind of conversion. It's called an HDMI video capture, as I break everything guaranteed on my screen. Love it. And then that runs into my laptop. That's it. So really straightforward, really simple. And I'm using the USB, whatever it is, like my setting is on the USB camera that's coming in here. So hopefully that's helpful for you, man. I'm definitely not a crazy tech guy, but at some point I'm sure I'll shoot some kind of YouTube content on my channel about like, here's exactly how we film all this stuff. But yeah, that's why. Yeah. And then for a microphone, yeah, I've got the latest MacBook. It's probably like a 2023 MacBook at some point, like all the upgrades with it, so that it's really good at capturing all this high quality video. And the microphone, believe it or not, is actually just straight through this MacBook. They're so good now with how good their sound capturing is for the mics, as well as the noise cancellation, everything. So that's it. If you guys have any questions, like what suit I'm wearing, whatever, let's talk. I'm down. I'll answer all of it. Good stuff. And just
I had a quick question before you jump in. So your next part there, Jake. Pleasure to connect. Emmanuel speaks extremely highly of you. I had a quick question. I know you've had very successful years leading up to this, and congratulations on that. Given that volume of sales, have you found that when you maybe got started in the business, and you had a business background, did you come in and did you just jump into something like an online lead gen source kind of right away? Like what did you find was really your most, where you spent most of your time in that first year to get ramped up, if you don't mind sharing?
Oh, 100%. So number one, if all of you guys aren't following me on YouTube, go drop me a follow and a subscribe. I'm giving away everything that I do for free. And by everything, I mean, Keith, buddy, my first year, I've actually got a video where I'm like, here's how much money I made my first year in real estate. And I break every single lead source down one by one. Like, here's how many leads I got from this. Here's how many conversions I got. Like, I break it all down.
Looks great.
So to share with you though on the call, because go watch that video, man, it'll give you all the context. But to dive deeper with you on this call today, here's what I would say. Everything in real estate works. And the reason I referenced billboards earlier and then I said I'm not doing them, but I believe that they work, is because everything works and it all depends which stage you're at in the business. So that question of, what did I jump into? What did I do early on? Is such a good question, because it evolves as you go, what you should focus on and where you should put your attention. So I've been thinking a lot about this. I was actually drawing some of this out this morning, Keith. And here's what I thought about. There are things that you could do right away that I did a ton of deals from door knocking. That was a source that cost me no money that I went out and did right away. I did, I think, 6 deals my first year from pay-per-click advertising. And the very first deal I ever did, Keith, was actually from some PPC ads. I had about a $200 a month budget where I was targeting leads in a small town that I was living in. And the first deal that I did was someone who came through, they got a PPC ad, they clicked on a property, they messaged me not knowing who I was and said, I want to go see that house. And I responded right away because I was like, sick, a lead. This is amazing. And I took them out and they bought the first house. This is a perfect example of beginner's luck when it comes to that first deal, like just a cool little nudge from God in the direction of like, hey man, go after this thing. So I take this person out, Keith. They decide to buy that house and they're like, this is great, Jake. We want to buy it. we also have a house we need to sell. Can you come over and tell us what our house is worth? I do my listing presentation that I fully ripped off from another agent. I practiced it like 10 times and I'd go and just do this listing presentation. And they're like, sounds good. Yeah, we'll pay you 5% commission. Awesome. Sounds good. And I list their house and I sell it and I crush the sale. Then I went out, Keith, and I door knocked that neighborhood. And I met a guy who was a renter in that neighborhood. And he's like, we're building a custom house in the next town over. You should tell us what it's worth. 2 months later, I go to that guy's place. He asked me to sell their house. I help them sell. I help them buy. I meet a girl at the open house that I was hosting. She's like, hey, we have a house that we want to buy. Calls me the next day. I really liked you at the open house. Will you help me buy it? I'm like, awesome. I buy that house with them. She's like, I got a house to sell and my mom's going to move in with me and she has a house to sell. Like, there is so much that transpired from just my very first deal that I did because I was all in on it. So not only did I crush the purchase for them, I crushed the sale. I went and door knocked the neighborhood. I let myself get lucky. Door knocked that whole neighborhood. Met a whole bunch of people who didn't do anything with me except for one guy. That one guy, when I sell his house, I make sure I host an open house. Freaking crush the open house. I got flags out on the lawn, posting about it all over socials, making sure it looks awesome in there. A girl comes in that I meet. I'm excited to meet everybody. I got snacks. I'm like, this is awesome. I meet this girl. Like, it's like you can see how it compounds because if you take care of the work will take care of you. So I'm going on a little bit of a tangent, but I think it's actually really important, which is when I first got started, I didn't know what worked. So I tried to do a little bit of everything. And I actually think that's okay because this business will reward you. If you've got a smile on your face and you wear a nice suit and you go out and you wear a nice blouse, whatever it is that you have, dress nice, look like you belong there. You belong knocking on the whatever $1 million houses. And watch how people will take you serious and they'll look at you like the expert. So is that helpful at all, Keith? Any thoughts on that, buddy? Tell me what you think about that.
No, absolutely. It's definitely helpful. I think it's awesome how you were able to leverage your time at the beginning, given that, you were brand newer in the business, boots to the ground, so to say, and evolving from that. So no, thank you for sharing. It's always refreshing to hear that word door knocking, right? So
yeah, check this out. So here's the other thing that I did. I took all the dollars from my early commissions and I reinvested them into the business. I tried to put myself to the best of my ability in a position where I wasn't like in need of trying to keep all that cash right away because I just knew I wanted to grow. And I also knew that if I could pay, check this out, because this is actually the most important thing. If someone to me right now today said, Jake, you're going to sell $200 million worth of houses this year, okay? But your profit margin is going to be like 5%. So in other words, you're not going to make that much money. You're going to make very little money. Let's say you make 100 grand this year. So I'm used to making 750, 850. This year I'll do $1 million. It's like, if someone said to me, you're only going to make 100 grand this year, but you're going to do a huge amount of transactions. You're going to do them really well. And everybody is going to be happy with the outcome. I would do that deal all day long. And the reason is, I would never have to spend another dollar on marketing as long as I lived. I could just wrap up everything. The reason I share that is because the reason we're all here looking to have a lead generation company help us with marketing is because at the end of the day, we want to do more business. And the reason I'd rather do, $200 million in GCI or in sales volume and only make 100 grand in GCI is because when you do more deals, more good things happen. It's a positive feedback loop. So the reason I share that is I took my dollars from those early deals and I put them into things like pay-per-click advertising. And then I didn't know how to get seller leads like Meskula figured out. So I was running YouTube advertising where people would have to fill out a form in order for me to get a seller lead. There was so much resistance to it, and yet it was still profitable and I was making money. When I saw what Meskula was doing from a lead generation standpoint, the cost per lead for someone raising their hand with a good phone number, a good email, even if X percentage of them wasn't good, the good candidates, I was like, this is huge because now all I need to do is sit down and be able to focus on calling these people. And I don't have to be worrying about running an ad campaign myself, modifying it as I go, etc. So that was what I did to try and get seller leads from paid advertising early on. And it was profitable for me. It worked. I think I spent 30 grand my first year on YouTube advertising. And I made something like $80,000. I explained it in that video that I was referencing earlier. You can go check it out.
Definitely.
But the reason I share that is 2.5 times return on ad spend is amazing. It's actually an amazing return on ad spend. And yet the cost per my lead was still very expensive relative to what a lot of us are paying for our seller leads with Meskula, or like that idea of doing lead generation. So I'm a big believer in go work like hell, door knock, host open houses. Like that's been a huge source for me in my business. I think I could run $1 million business right now off of just doing door knocking, door hangers, and a killer open house strategy with a newsletter, a digital newsletter that goes out monthly. That alone, I think, is enough to build $1 million business right now in real estate. So,
No, thank you. That was great. I really appreciate that answer. But detail is awesome. Thank you.
Awesome. Yeah, you got it, Keith. Yeah, man, the details, because like I'm over here doing it every day, thinking about it nonstop. So I love the questions too. Anybody else have any big questions like that, or just comments or thoughts on the business?
I would just want
Hey,
to share your
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
that Excel template.
Yeah, you know what? We're going to be putting together a whole bunch of resources to be able to share that. In the meantime, here's what you can do. I always say best software or template is the one you actually use. But what you could do right now to make your life real easy is if you go to Google and you just type in 411 template Keller Williams, you'll find a bunch of these free templates, and you can just go print them online and like write it down, which is really simple. The 411 idea is you have 4 weeks in 1 month in 1 year, and it's reverse engineering what it is you should be focusing on. So even if you just wrote down, what are my goals? And I gave myself the categories of business, finance, and personal. Personal is my health, spiritual, relationships, right? Finance is like, what are my financial goals? What are my debts? What are my obligations? Things I want to buy, pay down, whatever. And then business is transactions. What do I want to do? What do I want to build? What do I want my reputation to be, my brand to be, my client, experience to be like? How do I generate top end funnel leads? How do I nurture them? All that stuff. Awesome.
I actually work at Meskula with Karen and Emmanuel, and I heard about Nicolle. I was like, man, I gotta check this out. So, quick question for you. It's not really related to what you were talking about before, but you clearly seem like a super talented guy, and I was curious, how did you end up picking real estate instead of anything else?
Yeah, that's a golden question. Number one, I would love to know how to actually say your name, man. How do I say your name?
Grigore.
Grigore. That's the way cooler version of Gregory. Grigore. I love it. Well, hey, man, thanks for the question. It's a really good question. I chose real estate because I had done all these other businesses where I realized how much friction and resistance there was just to get leads and try and convert and try to have marketing systems in place and sales conversations. And I looked at real estate, and this is the God's honest truth, and it's very blunt, but I looked at a lot of the people in the industry and I thought, these people are making way too much money for how untalented they are. And I looked at the leaders in my local market and I thought, I'm so much more sophisticated than that person when it comes to marketing, when it comes to sales, and yet they're making more money than me, man. They picked an easier game to play. And I realized I'm playing really hard games with the hope that I will have an exit in a business in the next 5, 10 years, whatever, of a certain dollar amount. And then I realized with real estate, I had a high level of confidence that in just a couple of years, I could probably go out and make $1 million a year predictably and not have to fear that I wouldn't one day have an exit. And I also realized that cash up front was more valuable than potential cash in the future because I need cash up front to live. There's inflation to fight against. $10 million 10 years from now is worth way less than $500,000 starting right now every single year paid in full. So I realized, wow, like there's some compounding that happens by having money up front that you can use to grow and scale and do things. So the long answer long is that it gave me a competitive advantage that I think all of us today listening in can have, is that a lot of the people you're up against aren't working very hard, have a victim mentality, make a lot of excuses, don't put in the effort to learn anything about marketing. And the worst thing you could do is spend all your time just hanging out with other mediocre real estate agents because everybody thinks a certain way and you got to think different. So to answer that question more succinctly right now, be the big fish in the small pond. Be the person who has the competitive advantage in your favor. And when you do that, you don't even have to be in a blue ocean. You can just be the bigger shark who comes and eats all the fish and takes everything for yourself. And business is competition. I know that language sounds almost aggressive, but it is. It's competitive. Not everybody gets to share business. You really do win over other people, but still have an abundance mindset of like me, I'm out here right now sharing all this stuff for free. I'm not even selling anything. Yeah, I'd love to recruit some people to my downline in the future, but at the end of the day, that doesn't even matter. I'm like, you just give enough away, you're going to win. So have both those mentalities, be fiercely competitive in the business, and then also have this attitude of like, someone calls you and asks for help. You're like, cool, I'll give you all the advice in the world. You're probably not going to go execute like I'm going to anyway. So it's all good. Awesome. You got it, man. That's a great question. Yeah, that is the biggest reason I got in real estate. Last answer answer is that I didn't have to reinvent anything. All the models were already out there. All the companies to help me generate leads were already doing specific lead generation in this category. There's just so much low-hanging fruit in real estate. I don't know many other businesses where I can walk out on my street right now today, knock on every single door, knowing that here in my neighborhood, every single person owns that house and is one day going to sell it. All I have to do is build relationships. That actually, to this day, even saying it out loud, it blows my mind. Like, yeah, I guess everybody also needs a car, but it's like the likelihood that they're going to buy and sell real estate is just, it's there. Or someone they know. It's crazy. So yeah, super cool. Sean, what were you talking about, man, with your comment there? You said that's the absolute truth, only in real estate.
No, exactly what you're saying. Just that there's so much opportunity there. I mean, it's everywhere you look. You know, we're talking in the past. I mean, real estate is sexy. Everybody wants to talk about real estate. And, you know, I bought my house 20 years ago and I've made how much in equity? Oh my gosh. What am I going to do with that 800 grand? You know?
That's right.
Yeah, you're absolutely right.
Where are you based out of, Sean?
Southern California by Palm Springs.
Let's
and it's
go.
funny, I'm actually an auto dealer, and I've always done flip homes and kind of stuff on the back burner. So kind of doing the flip flop and trying to take the real estate, you know, to be the bread and butter in the car business in the back. So,
well, Sean, number one, man, rock and roll. What a beautiful, beautiful state you're living in, and a beautiful part of that state. And what I would encourage you in, man, is that with car sales, the most exciting thing about real estate, car sales has a whole bunch of benefits. There's a whole bunch of guys crushing it in that space, shooting awesome content. What I would definitely encourage you with real estate, that was also the other reason I got into it, that I loved it, is it's high ticket. So you do a deal, your average commission is worth a lot of money. You're in California. I'm over here in the GTA, where the average house price, like I mentioned, is like 850 grand would be like an average sale. I'm over here on the regular selling $1.3 million houses and up. And that means that my average commission is about 18 grand. But then I've got commissions where I'm out there, you know, like right last night, I just sold a house. On the sales side, I'll make, you know, $41,000, right? And that one house that I sold for 41 grand, the cool part is like, that's a lot of cars you got to sell to do that same volume. Absolutely. Now, the difference is you're on a lot, you got people walking in, you just got to be killer at attracting them to the lot and then being really good at that conversion, that sales conversation. Sure. Real estate's really exciting because I think you can just hammer volume at a really high dollar
amount.
But the
overhead from my lot is out of control too. So that's...
Yeah, real estate, it's one of the only businesses I can think of where I have access to billions of dollars of inventory and it costs me nothing to house that inventory. It's pretty darn cool.
So true.
Yeah, I just got to find buyers for the inventory, but there's no sweat off my back if they don't buy that inventory. And every day more inventory gets added. Sometimes it's a little scarce because there's not a lot of supply, but my job is just to find demand or go out and create supply, door knock, find listings, reach out to people. You have Meskula generating leads. Like, there's just so much cool opportunity with all this stuff. So Sean, awesome comment, man. Love it, buddy.
Awesome. Thank you.
So guys, we got, I think 20 more minutes here. Here's what I'd love to do. I'm loving the dialogue and the conversation. We talked about at a high level, how do you manage your time? And what I would encourage all of you to do is go away from here today. If you haven't already done your 2024 vision with a lot of clarity, I want you to get more clear about that. And the way that you can break it down is all of you've heard me rattle off a couple things. My average commission right now is 2.6%, okay, from my deals. So you should know what your average commission is from the past years, okay? Full year, I want a full fiscal year. If you don't know that, it means that you're not keeping track of things that you need to know in your business. So all of you should have some kind of deal chart where every deal you do is in that chart. The price you actually listed it for, sold it for is in that chart. So you have ratios of what's my list to sale ratio. Then you've got things in there like what's my average commission? What's the average number of times I take buyers out on showings? You want to know these patterns because these are like the diagnosis. It's like going to the doctor and understanding what the doctor's assessment is going to be of your health. That's how you do it for your business. You got to know the metrics that matter to measure. And that also helps you when you're setting a big goal. Like for me, I know I need to do 6 leads a day on average based on a whole bunch of numbers that I pulled from the Millionaire Real Estate Agent book, all right, Gary Keller's red book that you've all heard about, I'm sure. I pulled those numbers and he has a full breakdown. This is how many people need to be in your met database versus your unmet database, etc. So all of you should go away and go, what's my GCI target? If it's, I want to make $500,000 or $1 million, or maybe you just want to make your first 100 grand. That's awesome. You're going to put in there, okay, what is the average price point that houses are selling for? What's the average cooperating commission or listing commission? And then crunch that down to know how many houses you need to sell. And then you're going to look at that and be like, cool, if I need to sell 10 houses this year, or let's say 12 to make it easy, I need to sell one house a month. Well, I probably need to go on 2 to 3 listing appointments a month and 2 buyer appointments every month. Cool. How do I go do that? And you break that all down, and that helps you understand today, what is it that I need to do? And if you don't spend the time to have that vision, then today, what you're going to do is just pray and spray, man. You're going to be like, okay, I'm just going to pick up the phone, call some random people. I'm going to maybe go door knock later this week. And like, you push these things off, and you'll notice I'm putting an emphasis on the things that you can control to go out and do. So the fact that you have leads like Meskula, if you're running PPC, if you're doing other advertising, the fact that you also have leads that are just inbound, call those people right away. If you're driving in the car to an appointment, I use my drive time throughout the day to make phone calls. I'm calling back other clients. I don't sit there and listen to music or podcasts. That's my time to get business done. And then I want to enjoy my evenings. So, okay, I've summarized for now the layout of your day. The last thing I'm going to add to your day, which I kind of already did this. I shared leverage versus unleveraged time. So you do your one thing time, then you do your sales activities. Here's what my sales time looks like. I always start with new leads into my database, and I'm reiterating this, new leads into my database because they have big question marks on them. Someone might be piping hot and I don't want to miss them. Then I move on to my tasks that I set up for myself. Like, that lead was interested in this type of house and I didn't set up a search for them yet. I follow through on some of those activities that are directly related to leads that I now have an excuse to reach out and follow up with again. Then I move on to my hot prospects that I've labeled, my warm prospects and my cold prospects, and my sales time is done. Like, that's it. Just get on the phone, make phone calls. If you are not making phone calls, you are leaving so much money on the table, because I haven't even tracked this, but I'm sure if I tracked how I've converted all the deals that I've converted, I would say 95% of them are from me picking up the phone and actually speaking with somebody and building a bit of a relationship. And if you're not good on the phones, that's okay. You just haven't done it enough. You're going to get good by doing it. That's how I got good at it. And get around other people that are doing this in terms of their business, because it'll encourage and motivate you to do the same thing. So awesome. Okay, there you go. Done with all the teaching for right this second. What else do you guys have in terms of big questions, big thoughts? I've loved Keith jumping in, Sean, Shahida, awesome points, and Grigore. Did I say that right again? Grigore? It's an awesome name, man.
Yep.
Nice. Love it. Cool. Any other big questions? Anything else you guys are curious about, wondering about? Let's chat through it as we go.
Yeah, if I may. Hey, I was curious to know, Jake. So today we have an introduction call going through how are we planning our days or weeks or years. For next sessions, what can we expect?
Awesome question. So I'm actually going to be taking you guys essentially through a pilot of a full course that I'm working on. So it's going to be super fun to work through that together. A few of the different things I'm going to share. I'm going to share foundational high-level thinking, which we talked about a little bit of that today, but I also want to share things like how you can make sure that you're really clear in having a mission, vision, and values so that you can attract other people in the future, whether you want to attract agents, whether you want to attract team members. I'll probably cover some of that stuff a little bit later. We are going to go through the numbers together, which is you actually having some tools and resources to know how you can assess how many phone conversations you need to be having, how many leads you need to be getting. And I'll actually just show a glimpse of what this looks like as well. So there on my screen is showcasing all the numbers, the breakdown of numbers and categories of how it is that we track what's the GCI that I want to get, what's the dollar volume sold, what's the average size of a sale or a transaction in my market center. And then all of that gets broken down into how many appointments do I need to generate, how many leads do I need to have. We're going to walk through some of this stuff together because it really is the foundation for you to be able to sit and think about, if I have a target, how do I actually aim at that target and make it as clear as possible? The clearer you make it, the less you need to wonder what's going on. So we're going to talk through a bunch of that together. We're also going to go through things like working with clients. So I'll share how it is that I approach listings, how it is that I win listings. I'm also going to share things like social media, exactly what it is that I did, especially early on, to go out and generate lots of business through socials, because there is a good strategy. I think there's a lot of confusion about that, and like people on, TikTok, like pointing at things and all this silly stuff that I don't think builds trust with clients for them to see you as an expert. So I want to talk through those details. I've also got a newsletter that I continue to run that every month when I put out my newsletter, it's so highly personable and effective at helping me nurture people that are in my database and convert people that are going to transact at some point with me, but reinforcing me as their go-to resource. So I'll be sharing all those resources and some things like our house chart, etc. So we'll start to break down kind of systematically, step by step, how it is that we go through that. Today, I just really wanted to meet you guys, share a little bit of a high level thing regarding here's how I break down my scheduling, and we'll keep rocking and rolling from there. So yeah, if there's any other big questions, I can definitely share a few other important details. I'll throw this back to Keith. Keith, how is it that you structure your day, buddy? What does it look like right now in terms of how you set up your day?
I've been piloting the 5 a.m. club. It's quite a bit of a challenge. But I take care of I'm similar in ways that I take care of my heavy lifting stuff prior to let's say 2 p.m. I do like to kind of have my evening per se. A lot of times I'm going to end up doing showings and any type of appointment that I have then, because a lot of people are finished work at that time. But I would say that I do a lot of me time in the morning, first thing up, where it requires a lot of less brain power. And then I just pretty much live in my business first thing in the office and action everything accordingly from there. And I just keep going up until about, lunch or two, and then take care of that and any type of appointment setting or anything like that in the afternoon, evening. One thing that I could definitely, and I saw this with your schedule there, is, when I say me time, that consists of a lot of different stuff, like whether it's working out, doing this, doing that. It changes a lot every day. And one thing that I would love to dial it back with and add structure to is okay, well, what does that actually mean on the hour by the hour? Because the challenge that I'm having with that is I'm not getting my daily metrics the same on a full 7-day cycle. They're different based on activities. So what it does is their action, but lack of consistency. So it's got the structure, it's got the motive, but it doesn't have the right lights on. If that makes sense.
Not only does it make sense, here's a little experience that I can relate to you on, Keith, is I'll never forget one of the first guys that I rolled out a business with where we had an agency together is a guy who right now today, probably 7 years after we had first started that agency, he's exiting an agency that he just finished building for a couple $1 million. Like he just made a whole bunch of money. And I'll never forget, we were starting this business together and it was him and myself, and we had 2 partners. So there's 4 of us. And it was essentially an agency for Amazon advertising. And I remember looking at his calendar the one day, and he had 3 big blocks of time in his calendar. That was all he had put in there. It was like he had this morning 90-minute time, then he had like a 4-hour time block, and then he had like a final 90 minutes of his day. And I remember thinking, man, I'm about to get so much more done than this guy. It's unbelievable. Like, he's just doing 3 things today. I'm going to do like 30 different things. And my day looked like every 30 minutes I was doing something. My buddy knew something that I didn't know, which I've since learned, which is not all tasks are made equal. And the focusing question of asking yourself, what's the one thing I could do today that would make everything else easier or unnecessary, is a really important question to get deep into your skull, because it is the question that helps you understand today is an opportunity for me to actually move the needle forward. And I have all these responsibilities and tasks that I'm going to have to do, but they're ultimately unleveraged, meaning tomorrow I probably have to do all those tasks all over again. And I might get rich little by little, but it's going to be a grind. And the second I stop doing those things, I don't have a business anymore. Whereas leverage time is about focusing on those big things that give you opportunities, like having big marketing campaigns that run without you doing anything, hiring talented people, creating standard operating procedures. Like, that's the big boy stuff in this business. And my encouragement to you, Keith, is that the biggest thing you're going to have to learn is not to mistake movement for achievement. And I see it so much in this business. Everybody's busy. Everybody's hitting the gym first thing in the morning, journaling for an hour. Then they're meditating for 30 minutes. Then they're eating their breakfast. Then they're showering. Then they're journaling a second time. It's just like, man, a lot of stuff. And sometimes you actually just have to narrow it in to like, okay, I've only got so much time today to get things done. I need to pick the biggest things. And I'm going to spend 2 hours every day, big block of time. And I'm just going to be on the phone talking with people, prospects, new leads, whatever. And then after that, I'm going to spend 2 hours doing X. And then I'm going to spend time just going on appointments. And it's like, really trying to simplify your life so that you're not trying to do everything all at once. Is that kind of what you're feeling like you're doing?
Yeah.
Like just a lot of stuff? Yeah.
Yeah, it's just a blob of activity, essentially.
Yeah. So if I were you, I would pick 2 marketing pillars that you are going to become the best in the world at. And maybe it's door knocking, maybe it's phone calls. Like, for example, you got leads coming in. How do you call those leads? How do you add value to those leads? What's the scripts you use? Look up better scripts. Like, how can you follow up with existing clients that you've had to generate referrals and leads? How can you, like just going really deep on 1 or 2 things will then allow you to add another skill. And when you add that other skill, you don't sacrifice the skills that you've developed in the first thing, So pick a couple marketing things, go really deep on them. I mentioned earlier, open houses. Become the best in the world at running open houses. An example would be you're the guy who goes and door knocks an hour and a half before your open house starts, and you go and door knock the neighborhood, and you leave behind a door hanger that's like, hey, we're doing an open house. And then you go, cool, I'm going to put big flags in the lawn to draw attention. When people come in, I'm going to put air fresheners in the house so that my listings always smell a certain way. I'm going to have fresh baked cookies or coffee or bubblies or whatever. And then I'm going to have music playing, and it's going to be a playlist that sets the mood and sets a style. I'm going to make sure all the lights are on. When someone walks through the door, the very first thing I'm going to do is say, hey, it's so good to meet you. Are you guys are you already here in the area, or are you thinking about moving into the area? Then I'm going to get their name in my follow-up boss or my, whatever CRM you're using, and get all their info. They're going to give it to you. You just say, hey, the owner asked, I got to check everybody in today. What's your first name? What's your last name? What's your email? What's your phone number? You'll be amazed. Everybody will just give you their info, and then do the best follow-up in the world. The second your open house is done, send an email. Hey, this is how many people attended. This was the big takeaways from it. Like, I'm just dropping bombs on you of all the stuff I've thought about. And how do you go deep on one thing and make it really good? And then door knock the neighborhood when that house sells and be like, here's how many people came into the open house. This was the success we had. Like, tying some of those things together to be really effective. What we're talking about right now is leverage. The difference between huge businesses and really little businesses, like think of the store shop with the local owner who's been there 30 years. The difference between those businesses and Apple is literally just leverage. How leveraged they are in terms of staff, in terms of the quality of their products, in terms of the distribution. Like, it's just leverage. So many good comments, guys. I'm trying to keep up, make sure I don't miss anything. 8 a.m. rock and roll. Love it. Gone are the 8 a.m. days for me with my little guy right now, man. He wakes up at 6 a.m. sharp, standing up in his little crib. Cool. All right, guys. Awesome stuff. Emmanuel, how do you usually wrap these things up, man? How do they go?
How do they go? Well, we thank everyone for their time, and we let them know that tomorrow, 1 p.m., we have our call review. So if you guys want to hear what other conversations are sounding like from people in Canada, in the States, East Coast, West Coast, join us tomorrow at 1. Jake, really great to have you on, man, honestly. And Jake's going to be back with us in 2 weeks. So just a reminder, the 2nd and the 4th Wednesday of every month, we're going to have Jake with us Wednesdays at 1 p.m. Eastern.
I just can't wait to be with you guys in the next couple weeks. If you have questions, go check out my YouTube channel. It'll give you more context on how I think about stuff. And then if you guys want to dive into anything specific next time I'm here, I can't wait. I'd be happy to even just answer questions too. Jessica, it's good to meet you over there. You're cruising to an appointment right now, hopefully. You're going to go sell a bunch of houses.
She's like, yeah.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Okay. I thought I was muted. I was actually in an appointment. I had 2 this morning, both from Leeds. One's in Newburgh. They definitely want to sell. And actually, their daughter lives in the basement, and their kids don't want the house because they think they're going to fight over it. And so the daughter needs to buy a house. So I get a buy and a sell on that one. So they're looking to sell within the next couple months, 2 months. They need to clear out because they already have a place in Honduras and need to send stuff down to declutter. And then the second one was just a follow-up from an appointment I had this weekend to drop off the market analysis.
Let's go. We need to be learning from Jessica over there. It's awesome.
She's killing it.
I love this program. I really do. It's the best thing because having those contacts, having those emails, that's gold. Like, oh my God, where do you get this shit? I'm sorry. I love it because I could just bombard them until they say, oh, hey. And one of the best things, the sit down I had this morning, the gentleman told me that he met with another agent before. And he said, I'm so glad that you came and sat with me because this feels really comfortable and I'm definitely going to use you. And he's like, just getting to know you, it feels really comfortable. I did not pressure him or anything. He was like, so don't we have to sign contracts? I said, the first step is I'm going to provide you with your value after seeing your home. I said, and then if you like that value, we decide when you're ready to list.
Perfect. Nailing it. I love it. Awesome, guys. So good being with you. Jessica's crushing it. I love Jessica's energy over there too. Super cool. And I'll see you guys in a couple weeks.